Welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled you're here today because we're looking at something that is literally transforming modern healthcare from the ground up: data analysis. Now hold on. Before your eyes glaze over at the mere thought of spreadsheets and statistical formulas, stick with me. Today we're going to see how data analysis is absolutely not just about math. It's actually a vital, beating heart extension of modern nursing practice. Okay, let's dive right into this.
Get this, 96%. This striking statistic from our source materials shows that 96% of nurse leaders feel a profound moral duty to use their knowledge of data to help others. That's a massive, undeniable majority. It totally proves that embracing data isn't somehow pulling nurses away from patient care. It's deeply, deeply rooted in their personal values. They know that having the power to improve lives through data is an absolute privilege. So, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to hit 5 key areas. 1. The data-driven nurse. 2. Mastering healthcare metrics. 3. Visualizing with purpose. 4. Big data and AI. And finally, 5. Telling the data story.
All right, Section 1, the data-driven nurse.
Many incredibly skilled nurses feel a real tension when they have to step away from the physical bedside to go analyze a spreadsheet. Which brings up a completely valid question. Is being data-driven antithetical to caring? Like, does focusing on aggregate numbers somehow detract from the deeply human element of nursing?
Well, the answer is a resounding no. Locsin's 2017 theory of technological competency as caring beautifully resolves this whole paradox. Locsin frames technological competency not as some cold administrative chore, but actually as a higher form of patient care. Think about it. By understanding the data, like recognizing a really subtle, aggregated downward trend in a patient's vitals hours before a crisis hits, you are caring for that patient more comprehensively and proactively. The spreadsheet is simply another diagnostic tool. It's basically a digital stethoscope. And we actually see this exact philosophy hardwired into the profession itself through the AACN, the American Association of Critical Care Nurses. Their core competencies show how data is woven into every single level of professional nursing. It starts right at the base with knowledge for nursing practice, translating hard evidence into bedside action. Then it scales up to person-centered care, where leaders monitor aggregate metrics for safety and accountability. Zooming out even further, population health requires analyzing massive cost benefits to serve entire communities, and all the way up to scholarship for nursing practice, which literally drives the future of the profession. Data is the connective tissue linking your daily practice to global healthcare improvement.
Moving right along to Section 2, Mastering Healthcare Metrics.
So we're shifting from the philosophy of data to the practical mindset we need to actually understand it. Now, if the thought of complex math makes your palms sweat, take a deep breath. As our source points out, the focus of data analysis for nurse leaders is all about interpreting and applying statistical results. You do not need to be an expert statistician doing manual math on a chalkboard. The computers handle the equations for us. You just need to understand how to read the final results and apply those insights to improve your unit.
To do that, we really just need a shared vocabulary. Just a quick refresher on our core concepts here. First, understanding the difference between quantitative data. Those are the hard, measurable numbers like blood pressure, and qualitative data, the descriptive stuff like a patient's subjective description of their pain. We also need to separate validity and reliability. Validity asks, hey, are we actually measuring the right thing? Like, is this survey truly capturing patient satisfaction? Reliability asks, are we measuring it consistently every single time? And of course, you got to know your basic averages, the mean, median, and mode. Once you have these basics down, you are totally, fully equipped to look at what the data is trying to tell you.
Okay, Section 3, Visualizing with Purpose. This is where it gets fun.
Think about a heat map for a second. It's an absolutely incredible tool for busy leaders. It uses intuitive color coding, usually greens and reds, to display budget variances across different hospital units, instantly showing you who is under or over their financial targets. Instead of a nurse manager having to dig through dense, boring rows of black and white text, this makes complex financial data pop immediately. The problem areas literally glow red, allowing you to focus your incredibly limited time exactly where intervention is needed most.
Next up, we have control charts, sometimes called Shewhart charts. When we look at a chart monitoring, say, the average number of patients assigned to each certified nursing assistant month by month, it helps establish upper and lower control limit lines. This lets leaders distinguish between normal daily variations, the natural expected ups and downs of a hospital floor, and actual systemic issues. If that trend line suddenly spikes above the upper limit, you know right away that the staffing system is unstable and completely overburdening your CNAs. That requires immediate administrative intervention.
Then there's the box and whisker plot. This goes even deeper into the data by looking at patient acuity, which is the severity of illness and the level of care required, across different shifts and units. A simple average can be really sneaky, right? It might completely hide extreme situations on the floor. But a box plot shows the median scores, the general distribution of patient needs, and most importantly, the outliers. Those extreme acuity spikes that a simple mean calculation would totally smooth over and hide are suddenly visible. That ensures uniquely complex patients don't just get lost in the aggregate math.
Now, a quick word of warning, we have to be critical consumers of charts because data can be easily distorted. For example, if a bar chart's baseline is truncated to start at 70 instead of 0, the differences between the data points are going to look absolutely massive and alarming. But if you use a proper 0 baseline with the exact same data, it reveals a much less dramatic, much more stable reality. Similarly, manipulating the y-axis scale can artificially flatten out a trend line to hide a growing problem. Data can easily be accidentally or even intentionally distorted to tell a totally false narrative.
And sometimes, visual data is just straight up mathematically impossible. If the percentages in a pie chart magically add up to something crazy like 265%, well, unless you've discovered a way to create extra pi out of thin air, you've simply found a severely flawed chart. It's a funny example for sure, but it strongly hits home on the daily reality for nursing leaders. You absolutely must critically evaluate visual data, check those axes, and verify the math before you make decisions that impact patient care.
Which brings us to Section 4, Big Data and AI.
We are scaling way up now, from individual unit charts to the massive digital systems driving modern healthcare. When we talk about big data, especially regarding nationwide electronic health record systems, we characterize it by the 6 V's. Volume is the sheer massive amount of data stored. Velocity is the incredible speed at which new labs and notes are generated every single second. Viscosity and variability refer to how messy it is to work with data coming in wildly different formats, from structured blood pressure readings to unstructured physician notes. Veracity is the absolute, unquestionable accuracy required when lives are on the line. And volatility measures how long that data is actually valid before a patient's condition changes. Modern healthcare relies entirely on making sense of this overwhelming multidimensional stream.
So, to process that massive stream, we rely on machine learning and AI, which generally handle 2 distinct types of data. Supervised data has clear labels. We know exactly what the inputs and outputs should be. A great clinical example is feeding an AI historical patient data to accurately predict which current patients are at high risk for falls. Unsupervised data, on the other hand, is completely unlabeled. We feed raw data to the AI, and it has to find hidden patterns all on its own, like discovering entirely new, previously unnoticed correlations in patient recovery times across different demographics. Understanding this distinction is absolutely crucial for nurse leaders to know what kind of insights their hospital's tech can actually deliver.
Finally, Section 5, Telling the Data Story.
Okay, so all of this data, all these fancy heat maps and AI algorithms, they are entirely useless if we can't communicate the findings effectively to others. To make data actionable, our source material points to Dyke's 6-step narrative process. You start with a rock-solid data foundation, ensuring your numbers are perfectly accurate. Then, you define a crystal-clear main point. Next, you add an explanatory focus, explaining exactly why this matters to the hospital. From there, you build a linear sequence that naturally guides your listener from the problem straight to the solution, injecting dramatic elements to build human engagement. And finally, you lock the whole shebang in with visual anchors, like those precise control charts we just talked about. If you build a narrative moving through these steps, your data won't just sit in a dusty file, it will actively drive real change.
But here's the catch. Even a perfectly structured story is going to fail if it isn't relatable. You really have to know your audience. Think about it. Presenting a staffing proposal to the hospital's chief financial officer who just wants to see high-level budget heat maps is going to look vastly different than presenting that exact same initiative to your night shift nursing staff who desperately need to see how it impacts their hourly patient acuity. You have to meticulously tailor your presentation to how your specific audience best processes information.
As Carly Fiorina perfectly summarizes, the goal is to turn data into information and information into insight. That quote right there totally encapsulates the ultimate purpose of this explainer and exactly why nurse leaders must master these skills. Data all on its own, it's just noise. It's just numbers sitting on a server somewhere.
Your job as a modern, caring professional is to refine that noise into targeted insight that actually improves human lives.
So you now know that technological competency is a profound, incredibly impactful form of caring. You know how to read the core metrics, how to visualize trends without falling for distorted charts, and how to tell a compelling story that actually drives administrative change. So I'll leave you with this. How will you turn your unit's data into your next great patient care intervention? The numbers are just waiting for you. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.